The pup was going to die. Everyone knew it. Alpha King Eddie Marshall knelt in the frozen courtyard, his massive frame hunched over the trembling wolf cub that wouldn't stop snarling at him. Blood dripped from fresh scratches on his forearms. His jaw clenched so tight you could hear his teeth grinding from across the stone plaza. The most powerful shifter in the Northern Territories couldn't get a 3-month-old pup to calm down. And that pup was his son. Molina watched from the shadows near the East Tower, her rejection scars burning beneath her sleeves. The Omega they'd thrown out 6 months ago for being too weak, too broken, too useless. She'd only come back to collect the last of her mother's things from the healer's quarters. She wasn't supposed to see this, wasn't supposed to witness the mighty Alpha King on his knees, desperate and defeated. The pup's mother had died in childbirth. Rare, but it happens. What didn't happen was pups rejecting their own fathers. But this one did. Every time Eddie reached for him, the little wolf snapped and howled like Eddie was a stranger, a threat. 3 trainers had quit. 2 healers refused to keep trying. The whispers said the pup was cursed, that he'd inherited his mother's wild bloodline, that he was untamable. Eddie's beta, Marcus, stood nearby, looking helpless. "Alpha, we need to consider—" "Don't." Eddie's voice was granite, wrapped in barbed wire. "Don't say it." But everyone knew what Marcus was going to say. Put the pup down, for the good of the pack, for the stability of the bloodline, for the sake of Eddie's leadership, which was crumbling with every passing day that his own son rejected him. The whole pack had watched Eddie try everything, forced shifts to connect wolf to wolf, bringing in his late mate's belongings to comfort the pup, even traditional pack rituals that hadn't been used in generations. Nothing worked. The pup just grew more feral, more distant, more convinced that the world was his enemy. Molina should have walked away, should have grabbed her mother's journal and disappeared back into the rogue lands where rejected Omegas go to fade away. But something in that pup's golden eyes stopped her. Something in the way Eddie's shoulders shook, just barely, like he was holding back a howl of his own. She recognized that kind of pain, the kind that comes from being unwanted by the people who are supposed to love you most. She stepped into the courtyard. Every head turned. Eddie's dark eyes locked onto her. And for a moment, she saw the same man who'd stood silent while his council voted to expel her. The same man who'd let them call her worthless, damaged, a liability. The same man who hadn't said a single word in her defense when they stripped her Omega designation and cast her out into the winter. "Leave, Omega!" Marcus moved to block her path. "You have no business here. You're not even pack anymore." But the pup stopped snarling. His little ears perked up, his nose twitching in Molina's direction. The courtyard went completely silent. Eddie's eyes widened, his breath catching as he watched his son's entire body language shift from defensive to curious. The transformation was instantaneous, miraculous. Molina knelt slowly, 20 feet away from them. She didn't speak, didn't make eye contact with Eddie, just extended one hand, palm down, fingers relaxed. An offering, not a demand. The pup's tail twitched once, twice. Then he took a step toward her, away from his father, away from the Alpha King, toward the rejected Omega who wasn't supposed to exist in this pack anymore. "Don't move," Eddie breathed, and Molina couldn't tell if he was talking to her, himself, or the universe. The pup padded closer. His golden fur caught the late afternoon light, making him look like something out of an old pack legend. Each step was cautious but determined. When he reached Molina, he pressed his small muzzle into her palm and went completely still. Not submissive, not scared, just peaceful. Like he'd finally found what he'd been searching for all along. Molina's fingers gently stroked behind his ears, and the pup made a sound he hadn't made since his mother died. A soft, contented whimper. Around them, pack members gasped. Some whispered prayers to the moon goddess. Others just stared in disbelief. Eddie rose slowly, his movements careful, controlled. But Molina could see the tremor in his hands, the way his wolf was right there beneath his skin, desperate and protective and confused. He'd been Alpha King for 7 years. He'd survived challenges, wars, political coups. He'd negotiated peace treaties and executed traitors. But watching his son choose a rejected Omega over him was breaking something fundamental inside him. "How did you do that?" His voice was rough, barely human. Molina finally looked up at him, and her hazel eyes held nothing but raw honesty. "He doesn't need an alpha. He needs someone who understands what it's like to be rejected by everyone who's supposed to love you." The words hit Eddie like a physical blow. His jaw worked, muscles flexing beneath his beard. Around them, the pack members who'd gathered to watch whispered and stared. This wasn't just unusual. This was impossible. Omegas didn't have authority over alpha bloodlines. Rejected wolves didn't have bonds with pack royalty. This violated everything they understood about hierarchy and destiny. Marcus stepped forward, his face hard with disapproval. "Alpha King, this is clearly some kind of manipulation. Omega magic, perhaps. We should separate them immediately and—" "Get out!" Eddie's command cracked through the air like thunder. "Everyone out! Now!" The courtyard emptied in seconds. Warriors, council members, servants, all of them fled before their Alpha King's rage. Only Eddie, Molina, and the pup remained, surrounded by ancient stone walls and the weight of everything unspoken between them. If you're feeling what Molina felt in that moment, that impossible pull towards something you're not supposed to want, then you're in the right place. Hit that like button, subscribe to Lunar Mate Story, and turn on notifications because this story is just beginning. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when a rejected Omega and a desperate Alpha King are forced together by a pup who needs them both. Eddie knelt again, this time closer to Molina. Close enough that she could smell his scent, pine and smoke, and something wild that made her Omega instincts scream at her to run. Or submit, or both. Close enough to see the silver flecks in his dark eyes, the exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "Why did you come back?" he asked quietly, and there was genuine confusion in his voice, like he couldn't understand why anyone he'd hurt would willingly return. "My mother's journal. That's all. I'm leaving as soon as I find it." "That's all," he repeated, like he didn't believe her, like he was searching for hidden motives in every word. Then his eyes dropped to the pup, still pressed against Molina's side, finally calm after months of chaos. "He hasn't stopped crying since she died. 3 months of screaming. 3 months of everyone failing. 3 months of watching my son suffer and not being able to do a damn thing about it." His voice cracked on the last word, and Molina saw something she never expected to see. Vulnerability. Real, raw, devastating vulnerability from the most powerful alpha in 5 territories. "Everyone but me," Molina said softly. Eddie's eyes snapped back to hers, and there was something dangerous in them now. Something that made Molina's heart race for entirely different reasons. "Stay." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. Something in between. Something that sounded almost like begging, which was something Alpha Kings didn't do. "You rejected me," Molina reminded him, and her voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. "Your council voted. You stood there and let it happen. You didn't say one word when they called me defective. When they said my Omega bloodline was contaminated. When they stripped me and threw me out into the snow." "I know." The words came out like they'd been dragged over broken glass. "I know what I did. I know what I didn't do. Then you know why I can't stay." But even as she said it, the pup whimpered and pressed closer to her. His tiny heartbeat fluttered against her ribs, fast and scared, and so painfully trusting. Eddie saw it too, saw the way his son had finally found peace, and saw exactly who was giving it to him. The one person in the entire pack who had every right to walk away and never look back. "Name your price," Eddie said, and his voice dropped to something almost dangerous. "Anything. Land, title, gold, protection, power. I'll give you anything if you help him." Molina stared at the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories, offering her anything she wanted. 6 months ago, she would have taken it without hesitation, would have demanded her place back in the pack, her dignity, her mother's healing position. But 6 months in the Rogue Lands had taught her something valuable, something that changed her completely. She didn't need his pack. She didn't need his approval. She'd survived without it, and she could keep surviving. But this pup needed her, and maybe that was enough. 2 weeks, she finally said. I'll stay for 2 weeks. I'll help him adjust, teach him to trust you, show him that you're safe. Then I'm gone, and you never contact me again. Eddie's jaw clenched, and for a moment she thought he might refuse, might try to command her. But then he nodded, just once. 2 weeks isn't enough. It's what I'm offering. Take it or leave it. They stared at each other, and Molina felt that dangerous pull again. The one that had gotten her into trouble before, when she'd been young and stupid and thought maybe an Alpha King could see value in a broken Omega. The one that made her think maybe, just maybe, there was something worth saving in Eddie Marshall beneath all that power and pride. He stood, towering over her, every inch the dominant alpha. 2 weeks, you'll stay in the East Wing. You'll have access to whatever you need. Food, clothing, healers, anything. He paused, his voice dropping lower, more intimate. And Molina? No one touches you. No one disrespects you. Anyone who tries answers to me personally. You're under my personal protection now. Then he walked away, his footsteps echoing off the stone, leaving her alone with his son. And Molina realized she'd just made a deal that was either going to heal something broken in this pack or destroy what was left of her completely. The pup looked up at her with those knowing golden eyes, and Molina whispered to him, "What has your daddy gotten us into, little one?" The next morning, Molina woke to find Eddie standing in her doorway before dawn, exhausted and desperate. The pup had cried all night, without her, screamed and thrashed, and refused to be comforted by anyone. Eddie's eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, and there were fresh claw marks on his chest where his son had fought him. "He needs you," Eddie said simply. So Molina went, took the pup into her rooms, let him curl up in her bed, sang him old Omega lullabies her mother had taught her. Within minutes, he was asleep. Deep, peaceful, dreamless sleep. Eddie stood in the doorway, watching, and the look on his face was something between gratitude and torture. "How?" he asked again. "He feels safe with me," Molina said, "because I don't want anything from him. I'm not trying to mold him into an alpha. I'm not afraid of what he represents. I just see him, a scared pup who lost his mother." Eddie was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Is that what you needed? When you lost your mother? Someone to just see you?" Molina's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected him to remember that her mother had died just weeks before the council voted to expel her. Yes. And no one did. No, no one did. The silence between them was heavy with regret and missed chances. Finally, Eddie spoke again. "Teach me. Whatever you're doing, teach me how to do it, so when you leave, he won't be alone again." And Molina realized that maybe Eddie Marshall wasn't just a proud Alpha King. Maybe he was also a father who was terrified of failing his son. Maybe that made him more human than she'd given him credit for. The days that followed were strange and intimate and complicated. Molina taught Eddie how to approach his son without dominance, how to read the pup's body language, understand his fears, respect his boundaries. Eddie was a surprisingly quick learner when he let his guard down, when he stopped being an Alpha King and just became a father. They spent hours together, in the nursery, in the gardens, in the quiet corners of the castle where the pack couldn't watch them, and slowly, carefully, Eddie's son began to trust him again. Began to see his father as safety instead of threat. But something else was happening too. Something neither of them had planned for. Every time Eddie's hand brushed Molina's, there was a spark. Every time their eyes met over the pup's head, there was heat. Every time Eddie smiled at her, really smiled, not that political mask he wore for everyone else. Molina felt something inside her chest crack open. And she could see it happening to him too. The way his gaze lingered on her face. The way his voice softened when he said her name. The way he found excuses to be near her, to touch her shoulder, or her hand, or the small of her back. Stay with me now, because this is where everything changes. If you're invested in Molina and Eddie's story, make sure you're subscribed to Lunar Mate Story so you don't miss the moment when denial turns to desire, and two broken souls realize they might be each other's salvation. On the 10th night, everything fell apart. Marcus called an emergency council meeting. Molina wasn't invited, but she heard the shouting from 3 corridors away. The council wanted her gone, wanted the pup taken from her influence, wanted Eddie to choose between his pack's stability and a rejected Omega who was causing too many questions, too much disruption. Eddie's roar shook the castle walls. She stays! Alpha King, think about what you're doing, Marcus argued. The pack is talking. They're saying you're bewitched. They're saying an Omega has unnatural power over you. Your authority is being questioned. Let them question. You can't mean that. You've spent 7 years building this pack's strength. You can't throw it away for what, Marcus? Say it. For a rejected Omega? For the woman who's done more for my son in 10 days than any of you did in 3 months? The silence was deafening. Then Marcus spoke again, quieter but more dangerous. For the woman you're falling in love with. Eddie didn't deny it. That's what made Molina's heart stop when she heard it through the door. He didn't deny it. My personal life is not your concern, Eddie said coldly. Everything you do is our concern. You're the Alpha King. You don't get personal. You certainly don't get to fall for damaged goods that your own pack rejected. The sound of furniture breaking echoed through the castle. Eddie's wolf was loose, his control snapping. Get out! All of you! Before I do something I regret! Molina ran. Back to her rooms, back to the pup, who was sleeping peacefully in her bed. She was shaking, her mind racing. 4 more days. She just had to survive 4 more days, and then she could leave this mess behind. But Eddie found her an hour later. Stood in her doorway again, breathing hard, his eyes wild. Tell me you don't feel it, he said. Eddie, tell me I'm imagining this. Tell me it's just gratitude or convenience or whatever rational explanation makes sense. Tell me you don't feel this thing between us, and I'll let you go in 4 days like we agreed. Molina's hands clenched in her lap. What I feel doesn't matter. You're the Alpha King. I'm a rejected Omega. Your pack would never accept. I don't care what they accept. He crossed the room in 3 strides, knelt in front of her. I care what you want. Do you want me, Molina? Because Moon Goddess help me, I want you. I have wanted you since the day you walked into my courtyard and did the impossible. You rejected me, she whispered. I was a coward. I let the council bully me into silence when they voted against you. I told myself it was for the good of the pack, but the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what it meant that an Omega made me feel things I'd never felt, even with my mate. And I've regretted it every day since. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Stay, not for 2 weeks. Stay. Be with me. Help me raise my son. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth a second chance. Molina's eyes burned with tears. Your pack will never. Then I'll challenge every single one of them. I'll rebuild the council. I'll change the laws. I'll do whatever it takes. His voice broke. I can't lose you again. I can't watch you walk away, knowing I didn't fight for you this time. And Molina realized that some bonds aren't chosen. Some bonds just are. Inevitable as the moon pulling the tide. She'd spent 6 months convincing herself she didn't need this pack, this alpha, this life. But maybe need wasn't the right word. Maybe it was want. Maybe it was deserve. She kissed him, soft and sweet, and full of all the things she couldn't say out loud yet. And Eddie kissed her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. The pup woke up, saw them together, and for the first time, he made a happy sound. like he'd known all along what the adults were too stubborn to see. 2 weeks later, Molina stood before the Pack Council as Eddie's chosen mate. Half of them voted against her. Eddie removed them from their positions that same day and appointed wolves who understood that strength came in many forms, that an Omega who could tame the untamable, who could heal the broken, who could stand in the face of rejection and still choose courage. That Omega was exactly what their pack needed. Marcus left the territory rather than serve under a rejected Omega. 3 other families left with him, but 30 more stayed. And in the months that followed, more Omegas came to the Northern Territories, drawn by stories of an Alpha King who'd chosen love over tradition, who'd protected the powerless, who'd proven that your past didn't define your future. The pup grew strong and confident with 2 parents who loved him, who taught him that power was nothing without compassion, that being an alpha meant protecting everyone, especially those the world tried to reject. And late at night, when the castle was quiet, Eddie would hold Molina close and whisper, "Thank you for doing the impossible." "Which part?" she'd ask. "All of it. Saving my son, saving my pack." He'd kiss her forehead. "Saving me? Some bonds aren't chosen, some bonds just are. And if you want more stories of fated mates, impossible odds, and the kind of love that changes everything, subscribe to Lunar Mate Story. Because in this world of alphas and omegas, the most powerful magic isn't strength or dominance. It's 2 broken souls finding wholeness in each other. Hit that subscribe button, and let's continue this journey together.